You wouldn't believe it just by looking at it. Barry Wilkins looked right at it, and he didn't believe it. There was a patch of ground, not much bigger than his head, that Lieutenant Myers said would maim or kill the fool who stepped on it. Lieutenant Myers inspected that patch of ground for a moment before scraping the crusty top with the edge of his knife. Barry wondered what was beneath it. They told him that the NVA had all sorts of surprises for guys like him. And guys like him meant grunts, infantry, gunmen, and other terms all meaning the same thing: soldier. Those surprises were not the good kinds either, despite having a name that might give the impression that they did in fact have something good waiting for a lucky guy. Somehow, the NVA made an absolute good like breasts into something terrible. Who'd have thought that boobies could be so bad? Yeah, said Tompkins, a rough-necked, red-headed man whose kit never really seemed to fit. Even his rifle looked like a toy in his hands. I bet these are the kind of boobies you don't want to play with. Lieutenant Myers quieted them. There aren't any boobs around here except you two. Now shut it and take a look. The new guys, who amounted to about 10 fresh faces, all leaned close, but not too close. Myers lifted a section of the ground away to reveal a dug-in pit full of bamboo spikes. Barry was always told he had a big head, but the hole itself was quite a bit larger, perhaps big enough for a foot and some leg. It looked terrible. Barry once stepped on a 4-inch nail when he was a boy. That hole in the ground looked like it probably was a heck of a lot worse. Sergeant Mitchum pointed to the hole. That right there is a punji pit. The enemy likes digging these with the expectation that one of you will be fool enough to oblige them and step on in. They put them all over the place. You watch where I and the lieutenant go, and you'll be fine. You understand? The whole squad called out that they understood. The booby trap was marked. The patrol was then organized. Myers ordered everyone to continue to the outpost. And as the whole platoon marched along, Barry looked at the half-exposed hole in the ground, a shiver running up and down his spine. You're right, Tommy, he said to Tompkins. Definitely don't want to be playing with that. Vietnam was very much like he expected it to be. It was hot all the time. Hotter, in fact, than his grandma's home down in Mississippi. That place was so hot that Grandma used to say that whenever the devil came around, he needed a glass of ice-cold sweet tea to get by. Barry didn't believe in that. By the time he was 18, he was fairly certain that God and Satan were not who people said they were. He remembered praying for his mother when she got cancer. Didn't do any good. Gods and devils were just fairy tales along the lines of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. Every last person he knew tried to convince him otherwise. The fact that Vietnam was hot, green, and full of people trying to kill him felt like a change for the better. He knew what to expect coming in and did not disappoint. The booby traps, despite not having any real boobs, were the exception. They scared Barry. 3 men in the platoon were hit with a tripwire strung up to a live grenade. Another man, high off his ass on pills, wandered off to take the path less traveled and promptly hit a tiger trap, which snapped his shin bone clean in half. Barry made sure to be extra careful to follow Mitchum's and Myers' footsteps. But the breast-deprived booby traps were only a small part of daily life. There were gun battles against shadows in the trees. Barry usually just kept his head down as much as he could while firing off a few shots at puffs of smoke or pop-bang Kalashnikov flashes. Once, he saw one of the enemy soldiers stand up and take aim. That guy lasted about 2 seconds at the tree line before 8 or so bullets dropped him like a sack of potatoes. Barry didn't like killing so much. It seemed like wherever he went, though, death followed. Vietnam was as green as they said. The trees were green. The far-flung fields in the valley were green. Hell, there were even evenings when the sky seemed green. Everything was green except for the outpost. The engineers did a hell of a job uprooting every last tree, shrub, fern, or moss bed to make the brownest, dirtiest place imaginable. Those engineers did such a bang-up job wrecking the hilltop that Barry wondered if they wanted to kill the earth too. After that first patrol, life became about moments between hunkers. Patrolling the lanes, hunkered down for the rain. Watching for booby traps, hunkered down for snipers. Looking for enemy contact, hunkered down for a gunfight. Shoot the enemy while hunkering down for the rain, snipers, and the gunfights. Manning the posts during the night while hunkering down from the bugs. Hunker down from the rain while hunkering down from the bugs while hunkering down from the heat. Sleeping whenever he could, even while hunkering down from the world. He learned to hate the word hunker. Sergeant Mitchum kept the platoon operating. He barked a lot, but never too much. Lieutenant Myers always seemed busy with maps, radios, and a shifty man who didn't look like he belonged in Army green. Tompkins was a good guy and kept the most boring moments a little less boring. They hit it off quickly when Tommy showed how to get to a hidden dugout where some other guys hid their contraband, which amounted to about 5 stacks of cigarettes and a single stack of pills. He talked constantly about his home in Maryland. It seemed to Barry like a good place to make a farm. One day, when the rains were done and the sun baked the outpost, Tommy Tompkins and Barry stood watch at the outlook which oversaw the whole valley. They struck up a conversation. "Tell me about home, Tommy. What do you miss most?"
"You mean other than tits?"
Tommy wondered. Barry nodded, but he saw the point.
"I guess other than those, I'd have to say I miss Sunday dinners most."
"What were yours like?" Barry wondered, wiping the stock of his rifle clean.
"Pot roast, collard greens, carrots, mashed potatoes. Susie made these butter roasts that were to die for."
Susie was Tommy's sweetheart back in Maryland. As much as he talked about his family's farm, he talked about her more. And by the second week in the outpost, Barry knew more about Susie, her cooking, and the dimensions and character of her breasts than anything else.
"Oof, that sounds nice,"
said Barry. Not about Susie's bust, but about her cooking.
"Yours?"
"Sunday dinners? Well, we had ham a lot. Mashed taters, string beans, maybe some gravy. Nothing too special." Their conversation continued for another 30 minutes with topics ranging from home cooking, Susie's breasts, going to movies, Susie's tits, favorite books, Susie's honkers, and eventually ending up on the virtues of Ford tractors. Barry had little experience with most of those things and took joy in living a happier life through Tommy's stories. The conversation ended when 3 Hueys thundered in from over the tops of distant hills. Those 3 helicopters brought only bad news and a Vietnamese translator who looked like he could kill a tiger with his bare hands. Barry and the others didn't catch his name the first 2 times Mitchum butchered it, so they set about calling him Tiger. The quirky man who didn't belong in fatigues stood next to Lieutenant Myers as he announced that the platoon would move to a nearby village to investigate whether they had been aiding the NVA or not. It was a big deal. As hot as the day had been, it felt even hotter as riflemen gathered their gear and supply for the riot to the far side of the valley. Barry had everything done in a hurry, and before long found himself shoved into the guts of a Huey alongside Tommy. Nothing about the trip felt good. Something felt off, like Tiger and the strange man were up to worse things in a place chock full of people up to no good. The ride over to the village was quick, a blink and you'd miss it affair full of rock and roll and blank on the verge of a fight stairs. It wasn't long before Barry felt the helicopter lurch forward and fall towards a field with billowing smoke. The call came out. Barry slid from his seat and dropped to a knee-high grass, gun at the ready. The area already looked as if it had been hit hard. The village on the far side of the field smoldered, while columns of black and gray smoke craned towards the river plain in the distance. Barry noticed scattered corpses, men and women and children, littering the raised dirt roads. For some reason, the dead reminded him of fallen dogwood petals beneath the trees in spring. Mitchum convened the platoon. Everyone fell into place a good distance from each other. They established a skirmish line and then approached the village. They met no resistance crossing the field, and when Barry stepped into the village, he was met with a stink of cordite, blood, smoke, and shit. He counted no less than 20 dead villagers. Some had been shot in the back. One had a gaping hole where his temple should have been. A woman rested against a collapsed hut with most of her guts spilled onto her legs. Myers ordered the platoon into squads to search. Barry wondered what it was they were searching for. He figured it was for something more fucked up than what he had already found. Barry led the way while Tommy was not far behind, to his right. They searched the western edge of the village. There, Tommy and one of the quieter guys named Dabrowski found 5 more dead villagers. Barry did not like killing. He had seen his friends get killed in fighting. It always hit him hard. He had been told he'd get used to it. But seeing those dead villagers, dads and moms, young guys who were probably somebody's little brother, it took the wind from his lungs and his head off his shoulders. He wandered too far from his squad. First came the snap and the sting. It hit him on the leg hard enough to register. The first thing that went through his mind was shit, and then tits. And what he meant was, oh shit, I've hit a booby trap. He fell to the ground and screamed like he had just lost his leg. Tommy called out for help. And before the others came to help him, Barry gathered his courage to look at what he was certain was going to be a bloody stump. Instead, His foot was fine, not a single new mark or scuff to be seen, and never had he been so relieved in his entire life. But as he set about piecing together his frayed nerves, he felt compelled to look up. Not straight up, but up in the way you might if all your attention was down. And he did. And what he saw in the trees caused him to scream.